Governor of Connecticut has signed into law a package of anti-landlord rules that will make housing more expensive and won't do anything to help landlords. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over a package of anti-landlord laws that they're passing up in the state of Connecticut. So obviously, Connecticut is one of those places, okay? It's one of those places where they don't believe that landlords should have any rights. And they are slowly chipping away at those rights by passing laws like the ones that I'm going to cover here in this article, okay? So they passed a very, very pro-tenant thing, and like there's nothing in it, no provisions in it whatsoever that are actually going to help, increase the amount of housing or make housing more affordable. The only thing it's really going to do is create a burden on landlords and make them have to jump through significant hoops in order to operate their businesses. And those hoops, you know what they're going to end up with, right? They're going to lead to more expensive housing. So this hurts tenants. This hurts tenants, and it blows my mind that they just can't figure out that the more laws, the more rules, the more regulations they try to pass, the worse things are for the tenants, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. Do you believe that there's a government solution to the affordable housing crisis? Do you think that they could pass a law or a rule or a regulation that will make housing actually more abundant and more affordable for tenants? I'm just curious, because that apparently is what these politicians believe. They believe that, hey, maybe this time this law will actually make things better. No, I don't think so. I think instead it's going to have a ton of unintended consequences where you end up with landlords getting out of the business, where you end up with property owners who are trying to do the best they can, yet they somehow are violating these rules, and they just are frustrated and getting fined and ridiculousness like that. So I think that this is bad overall. So anyway, let's get into the article because it is quite interesting. This article is coming from fox61.com, and it says how Connecticut's new housing policies will affect renters. All right, let's get into it. Governor Ned Lamont has signed one of the most contested bills this legislative session, a major housing policy package that includes new renters' rights. Portions will go into effect over time, some as soon as later this year. The bill was heavily debated and stripped down, passing just in time before the end of the legislative session. Democratic leaders didn't get the affordable housing zoning reforms they advocated for, and many argue this won't meaningfully increase the state's housing stock, but it's still got a lot in it. So yeah, they admitted right there, it's not going to increase the state's housing stock, okay? And they also said that, they actually stripped this down, okay? I mean, this is a nightmare for landlords up in Connecticut, okay? They put in so many anti-landlord rules and it's stripped down. Can you imagine if the original legislation had made it all the way through? I mean, just how bad would it have been for landlords? It would have been awful, okay? And this is still awful. But anyway, let's continue. Here are some of the changes. Application fees. Many extra application fees for apartments will be prohibited except security deposits, first month's rent, deposit for key or other special equipment, and the fee for tenant screening report. Landlord can only charge up to $50 plus any inflation costs for the screening report and have to give renters a copy. The state will determine what the inflation costs are. Landlords will not be allowed to charge move-in or move-out fees. These fee rules will be officially enacted and enforced starting October 1st. So yeah, I've gone over the whole application fee thing before, right? Now, there are some very ignorant people out there who actually believe that landlords are somehow making some huge profit off application. Yeah, I got in 1,000 applications. I was collecting $60 per thing and I already had the place written. No, landlords do not make money off of application fees, okay? Simply put, we spend money screening tenants. We spend a lot of money. And it's not just doing the credit check, the background investigation, etc., right? I mean, if you have an employee or in my case, a property manager who has to call up the employers, who has to verify all the information, who has to do the showings, etc. Well, I pay my property manager, half of the first month's rent in order to lease up a unit. So if my rent in the property is $1,000 a month, I have to pay my property manager $500 to get the place rented because it takes them time and money in order to rent an apartment. So yeah, I'm not making any money when I'm doing all this stuff. Okay, the money is going to my property manager. It's going, basically to pay my employees. Okay, and in the case of people who do their own showings, well, it's paying them. It's paying them for their time, their effort. And what you're telling us is, well, you don't give a crap about the money we have to spend in order to get tenants up in our units, right? So application fees are very much necessary. Late charges. There are new limits on the amount landlords can charge in overdue rent fees. Tenants get a 9-day grace period before fees can start. Week-to-week renters get a 4-day grace period. When it comes to how much they can charge, fees have to be at least the least of these options: up to $5 a day for a maximum of $50, 5% of the undue rent, 5% of the tenant's share of the rent if they're in a rent aid program, like the Housing Choice Voucher Program. No matter how late the rent is, landlords can't charge renters a fee more than once. This goes into effect October 1st. So, no matter how late the rent is, right? So, let's say the tenant is 6 months late on rent. Well, you can only charge one late fee. Now, I know what you're asking. You're like, well, why would you let a tenant get 6 months behind on rent? I'm just using it as an example, okay? No matter how late the rent is, you can only charge one fee. And the maximum fee, it looks like, is $50. So you can never charge more than $50 for a late fee. You know, the reasoning behind the late fees, right? And I know that politicians don't understand this because they're dumb, right? But the reasoning behind having the late fees in place in the first place is to discourage people from paying late. I mean, why do you think we put these late fees in place? It's not because we want to make money off of late fees, right? We want the people to pay their rent on time. And by having a mere $5 late fee, you're basically making it so that there's no, like, who gives a crap if you pay the rent late? Now, even with a higher late fee, yeah, you're going to still have tenants who pay late, right? But you're going to discourage a lot of them from wanting to pay late because they're not going to be able to cover that extra cost. So they're going to pay you on time. And now you're going to end up with a bunch of tenants who are paying late all the time because they know that the late fee ain't garbage, okay? So anyway, return security deposits. Landlords will have to return tenant security deposits with interest on the deposits quicker, within 21 days rather than the current timeline of 30. Landlords who take longer to return the deposit will owe them double the original security deposit amount. This also goes into effect on October 1st. So keep in mind what I just read. If you take longer than 21 days to return the security deposit, then you have to pay them double. So if you have $1,000 security deposit, right, and you get that security deposit back to the tenant on day 22, well, guess what? Now you have to pay them $2,000. Okay, they get a bonus. They get a bonus for nothing. They get a bonus for absolutely nothing. Doesn't matter shit what you say. You're just the landlord. The tenant should be getting bonuses. Maybe it took that long to get through the mail. Who knows? But whatever the case, you know that this is going to be a huge problem for landlords going forward. Landlord discrimination. Small landlords, defined as those who own 4 or fewer units, are banned from discriminating against applicants because of their sexual orientation. The current state law didn't stop those who are renting out one room in their house or landlords who rent out housing in a smaller building. The new law removes that exemption. Pre-occupancy walkthroughs. Landlords will be required to offer potential renters a walkthrough as they're entering a lease agreement so that they can both note the conditions. This is meant to help tenants immediately address any repairs that need to be made or get documentation of pre-existing damage. Landlords won't be allowed to deduct money from the security deposit for any damage found in the walkthrough before the tenant moves in. This doesn't go into effect until the beginning of 2024 and won't apply to leases entered before then. I already did that. Okay. All the landlords I know already did that. We don't need a law that says that sort of thing. But of course, they think that passing this law will somehow fix things. Well, you know what it will probably do is the tenant will be like, oh, well, making stuff up. The tenant will use this as an excuse for damages that they claim were there, during the walkthrough. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Online eviction records. Any eviction cases that were withdrawn, dismissed, or decided in favor of the tenant will be removed from online records. The state's judicial department must remove them within 30 days. Some tenant screening companies pay the state to get eviction case data, and it can make it near impossible for the renters to find new housing. Now, the judicial department will be banned from transferring over or selling these erased cases. This process will start on July 1st of 2024. So the bad part about that, right? And this is something that I want to bring up again. Simply put, just because an eviction wasn't finalized doesn't mean that this is a good tenant. In fact, just having an eviction on their record is a very, very good sign they're a bad tenant. And that is part of the reason why we want to see full eviction records. How, like if a tenant, I want you to picture this. You got a tenant, right? Has no finalized eviction on their record, but has 20 evictions that have been filed against them. Well, that's kind of a key indicator that this is a bad tenant and you don't want to put this person in your property. But in Connecticut, oh, who cares? That this is a good tenant. They were never actually evicted. Yeah, they just abandoned the house and left before, the landlord could officially evict them. Housing code violations. Towns will be allowed to increase fines on landlords whose properties violate housing codes from $250 to $2,000. So yeah, they basically want to fine landlords as much as possible. So they're exponentially, almost 10 times more is the amount they're going to be able to fine landlords for housing code violations. Keep in mind, a lot of these violations are caused by the tenants. So tenants are causing housing code violations, and the landlord now has to pay out the yin yang in order to pay the city off and fix all the problems. Yeah, this is not going to be good for tenants. It's not going to be good for landlords. It's going to be bad for everybody. So yeah, we have a whole bunch of anti-landlord bills that passed up in Connecticut, and I feel for the landlords up there. There's more of this kind of stuff to come. Okay.